Last month, I hit the point where my production databases had to leave Notion and move to Airtable. Not because Notion is bad, not because Airtable is magic, because once a system becomes operationally critical, I need reliability and structure more than flexibility. And I'm not quitting Notion. I'm putting it back in the role it's actually best in. If you're running real workflows in Notion, ops, client delivery, content pipelines, internal requests, this is for you. When I say production database, I mean this. If it breaks, work stops, or people quietly create side spreadsheets, and now you have drift. By the end, you'll be able to look at any Notion database you have and decide where it belongs. You'll know the signals that mean this needs Airtable. You'll know when it can stay in Notion, and you'll know the one category where Notion still wins for me, even when things scale. Here's the distinction I use. Notion is a workspace for humans. Airtable is a database for systems. That sounds abstract, so let me ground it in what actually happens. A Notion database starts out fine. It's close to the dots. It's easy to change. It's easy to add a property. It feels like you can shape it around the team. Then, the database becomes the source of truth, not a helpful view, the place where operations depend on the data being correct. At that moment, the costs show up, not as one big failure, as small workarounds. Someone asks, is this up to date? Someone duplicates a view because they don't trust the filters. Someone adds a tag to compensate for missing structure. Someone changes a property type and breaks downstream expectations. And nobody is sure who owns the rules anymore. You can keep it working, but you keep it working with tribal knowledge. Now, compare that to what you want from a production system. You want clearer boundaries. You want predictable behavior. You want the data model to resist casual edits. And you want the rules to be obvious to the next person. And you want other tools to be able to reference it without you babysitting it. That's the operational difference Airtable gives me. Stronger structure, more explicit fields, more consistent constraints, and fewer will just remember how this works moments. So when I'm deciding whether something stays in Notion or moves, I ask a few questions. Answer them brutally. If this database went down or got messy, would revenue, clients, or core ops be impacted? Do multiple people update it? And do they need consistent rules to avoid stepping on each other? Am I relying on workarounds to keep it usable, like duplicate properties, manual cleanup, or don't touch this view instructions? Do I need a clear source of truth that other tools reference? Automations, forms, reporting, client-facing outputs. If you're answering yes to those, you're already treating it like production, even if it lives in a workspace tool. In a minute, I'll show you the split I use. What stays in Notion so you keep clarity and context, and what moves to Airtable so the operational layer stops feeling fragile. The split is simple in practice. Notion holds knowledge and context. Airtable holds operational truth. So what does Notion become when you stop forcing it to be your back end? It becomes the place for decisions, the why behind the process, The SOP that explains the intent, not just the steps. Onboarding that teaches judgment, not just clicks. It becomes planning and narrative. Project briefs, meeting notes, trade-offs, the context that makes the work coherent. And it becomes dashboards that reference the system, not dashboards that re-implement the system. That last part matters because the failure mode is subtle. If Notion is storing the same operational records as Airtable, you've created two realities, and people will pick the one that's easiest in the moment. Now, what does the Airtable own? The records that drive operations, requests, assets, inventory, clients, tasks, when tasks are actually records with lifecycle and reporting. It owns the fields and rules that keep data consistent, the parts that you don't want casually reshaped during a meeting. And it owns the workflows that depend on clean structure, the operational layer that needs to behave the same way every day. The handoff is this. Notion explains the system, Airtable runs the system. If you're migrating, the safest way is to treat it like a boundary change, not a tool swap. Start by identifying the tables that are truly production, the ones that, if wrong, create real costs. Then, draw a hard line between truth and context. Truth is the record and its fields. Context is information, the decision, the narrative around it. Then, move one function at a time, not everything. One operational loop, intake, or fulfillment, or reporting. Pick a loop where you can measure whether it's working. Then, validate by comparing outputs, not by asking if it feels better. Check whether the same inputs produce the same results. Check whether the team's habits still work. Check where people hesitate. And then, appreciate the old Notion database. Not leave it there just in case. Appreciate it so ambiguity can't survive. Now, to recap. Move to Airtable when the data is operationally critical, multi-user, and needs consistent structure. Keep it in Notion when the goal is understanding, planning, and shared context. Production systems need production-grade structure. Notion shines when the job is clarity and communication. Most migrations fail for one reason. People accidentally run two sources of truth. That is how you end up with two half systems and double the work. The rule that prevents it is simple. One source of truth per function. If Airtable owns production data, Notion references it and doesn't duplicate it. Not just for convenience. Not until we're sure, because until we're sure becomes permanent. So use Airtable for the operational database. Use Notion for knowledge and context. And avoid split-brain systems by making one tool the truth and the other the window into it. If you want, drop your setup in the comments, what your production database is doing, and who touches it. And I'll tell you where I draw the boundary so you don't end up maintaining two realities.